No compromise yet on DoD abortion policy talks, and could there be a new path to enlistment for college students? All that and more today, July 20th, 2023. Good morning, early birds. I'm Zimone Perez, and this is the Early Bird Brief, produced by Defense News and Military Times. First up, Defense Department leaders fielded questions and concerns from senators over the military's abortion access policy. Before we start today, we want to let you know about a special episode we have in store for tomorrow. At noon, we will be releasing an episode featuring actor Matt Damon as he talks about his latest film, Oppenheimer, which is set to open to the public tomorrow. So be sure to tune in. Now, back to the show. The closed-door briefing yesterday failed to lead to a breakthrough in the stalemate that has stalled hundreds of military promotions. Democratic lawmakers left the briefing saying the policy is both necessary and legal. The policy gives a travel stipend and leave time for service members to travel across state lines for abortion services if they are stationed in a state where the procedure is limited or outlawed. Republican senators said they heard no relevant justifications and vowed to continue fighting to overturn the rules. Alabama Senator Tommy Tuberville has blocked more than 250 military nominations and promotions over his concerns with the abortion policy since March. He's publicly defended the move, even though Defense Department and military leaders say his tactics are damaging to military readiness and morale.
1 in 5 of my troops, our troops, are women. They don't get a chance to pick where they're assigned. They're serving their country. They're sacrificing each and every day. And they deserve, in my view, and in the view of our leadership, they deserve to have access to non-covered reproductive health care. And that's what this policy does. It focuses on health care, non-reproductive health care, which includes other things like IVF and some other things. So it's important that our troops, our women, understand that we care about them. That we understand that they don't get a chance to choose where they're assigned, and so this policy helps them maintain access to that health care.
But initial responses from both Democrats and Republicans leaving the meeting showed little change to the stalemate. Pentagon officials answered senators' questions for about an hour. They said the military policy is similar to rules on abortion access for Peace Corps members and federal prisoners. Senate Armed Services Committee Chairman Jack Reed said the hearing left him more convinced of the necessity of the policy for women in the military and their families. When reporters asked him whether the arguments presented could change any Republican minds, Reed shrugged and walked away. Tuberville said he had no immediate plans to drop his hold. None of the Republicans leaving the briefing offered any potential path ahead for the stalled nominations. Last week, House Republicans inserted a full repeal of the military abortion policy in their draft of the defense authorization bill. Tuberville said he would like to see a similar vote in the Senate, but he did not commit to dropping the holds in exchange for a vote. If Senate leaders wanted to maneuver around the holds to approve military nominations individually, it would take months of nonstop work. Another important story, the U.S. military could soon start offering community college students a new path to enlistment. That's thanks to legislative provision making its way through the Senate. The proposed Enlistment Training Corps would mirror the Reserve Officers Training Corps units that have existed for more than 100 years at four-year colleges and universities across the country. It's part of the Senate's proposed annual defense policy bill. Just as ROTC provides students one option for commissioning as officers once they earn their bachelor's degrees, the Enlisted Training Corps would prepare students to join the enlisted force without sending them to boot camp. ROTC isn't completely off limits to those pursuing an associate's degree. 125 community and junior colleges have agreements with nearby universities that allow their students to participate in local Air Force ROTC chapters. That can give people a head start on the full ROTC program if they transfer to a four-year school. But community and junior colleges don't have their own pipeline to the military services. Some senators, though, want to close that gap. If signed into law, it could be one tool to help reverse a historic recruiting crisis that threatens to decrease the number of those serving in the armed forces for years to come. Under the proposal, the Army, Air Force, Navy, and Marine Corps would each receive $5 million to jumpstart the program at a community college or junior college. Lawmakers said students who take part in the enlisted training corps and agree to join the military could qualify for financial assistance. Though it's not defined in the legislation, the program could include much of the same drills, leadership courses, and basic level military training as ROTC. The idea may still end up on the cutting room floor. To become law, the provision must make it to the House and Senate's joint version of the bill, passed by both chambers of Congress and enacted by President Joe Biden, and funded by an appropriations package. An important note, the House version of the bill, which narrowly passed July 14th, does not include its own provision for an enlisted training corps. The idea is one of several provisions in the Senate Armed Services Committee's draft aimed at shoring up military recruitment. Army, Air Force, and Navy officials have all said they expect to fall thousands of enlisted troops short of their fiscal 2023 active duty recruiting goals. That's due to a combination of a healthy private sector, a cumbersome medical processing system, a lack of interest in the military among today's youth, and a dwindling population of even qualified young adults. The smaller Marine Corps and Space Force, however, believe they will hit their own targets by the end of the fiscal year on September 30th. In response, the Senate Armed Services Committee is encouraging the Air Force and Navy to aim for smaller workforces in fiscal year 2024, rather than staff up with subpar recruits. Its draft bill allows for 320,000 active duty airmen, 4,700 fewer than the Air Force requested, and 342,000 sailors, or 5,000 fewer than the Navy wanted. In other news, we are continuing to highlight the Military Times Foundation Service Members of the Year. Here's the 2023 Sailor of the Year.
A lot of what we do can be hard. You just learn to rely on your friends, rely on your crewmates, talk about things, and get through it and on to the next one. My name is Anthony Anglokowski. I'm a hospital corpsman, second class, United States Navy. I am a search and rescue corpsman. To me, being a corpsman means taking care of the people around you. Not only are you responsible for the well-being of patients who you may or may not know, any emergency that happens, but the well-being of also your shipmates, the people you work with. People are looking for you to help. People are relieved to see you. You get to make a substantial and objective impact on somebody's life. Everything here is absolutely critical to being a team. There are no one-man rescue operations. If you don't have two pilots, if you don't have a crew chief, if you don't have a rescue technician and a flight medic, none of these are happening. We exist with each other and for each other here. There's a whole hierarchy of how things get to us and how we end up getting activated. If the ground mountain rescue teams cannot do it, and pretty much if everybody else turns it down, it comes to us. When the altitude's too high, or the weather's too rough, or the mountains are too close, people call the Navy. So May 23rd, 2021, it was a Sunday. It was the third day of our duty rotation. We were launched for two hikers who had fallen about 1,000 feet down a slope. A rumor had it that at least one, if not both, had ended up in a crevasse somewhere down the slope. This one sounded very critical. The initial impression for somebody falling into a crevasse is that chances are not good that this ends well. But that doesn't mean we don't go and give it our all and take our shot at doing what we can. We did some research on the area. The weather was not promising, but we figured we'd go out there and give it a shot and see what we could do. The ground that we touched down on was about a 45-degree slope of snow and ice. We ended up using ice axes and the litters we were carrying as anchors so that we could traverse about 50 yards across the slope to where the subjects were. They report that the second victim went down the hole. That's about 10 yards off to my side. It's about, 2 feet by 2 feet, and there's a waterfall running through it from the snow melt. So it's a pretty grisly looking scene. If there was anything we could do about it, I had no intentions of leaving her on the mountain that night. The ground rescue guy was very, very cold from the waterfall. I swapped places with him and I got back in on the second rope. I was able to get myself under the ledge behind her and use my body to force her out over the ledge so that they could then pull her up. They got her to a ledge in a safe space and then came back and recovered me. Not every rescue has the exact outcome that you want it to have. Not everybody survives every injury, and not every situation allows you to get all the people that you want to get. But we do what we can. This wasn't a fantastic outcome to this mission, but we were able to pick up the other injured subject, get some good Samaritans off the mountain, and utilize the ground rescue team both in and out to make sure that we did everything we could. I hope that when I'm done here with this tour, people maintain a standard for medicine. I always encourage people to want more, to do better, to train harder, and I hope that that standard and that expectation exists long after I'm gone. I try to help wherever I can and whenever I can. It's the same thing I tell my son every day when I leave for work. Be good and do good. And I figure as long as I go out there and I continue trying to be good and trying to do good, I'm on the path that I want to be on.
Congrats to Hospital Corpsman Second Class Anthony Anglikowski. Also on your radar for today, the House Armed Services Committee Chairman Mike Rogers this week approved several Pentagon budget reprogramming requests related to troop pay after a delay forced the Air Force to suspend some bonuses. However, Rogers told Defense News he will still hold up numerous other reprogramming requests to protest the Air Force's failure to make a decision on the location of U.S. Space Command headquarters. The House Armed Services Committee's delay in approving a reprogramming request was forcing the Air Force to postpone some permanent change of station moves, selective re-enlistment bonuses, and other cash incentives for airmen. The holdup prompted the Pentagon and Air Force to each circulate sets of talking points to congressional offices last week. The Air Force memo noted the shortfall is driven by higher-than-projected personnel costs. The Pentagon customarily addresses these shortfalls by bundling reprogramming requests that move funds from accounts with surpluses to accounts with deficits. Top lawmakers on the Armed Services and Appropriations Committees in each chamber must then sign off on them. 2 years ago, during the final days of the Trump administration, the Air Force announced Huntsville, Alabama would serve as the new location for Space Command headquarters, instead of its provisional location in Colorado Springs. Several Colorado Democrats argued it was an act of political retaliation because President Joe Biden won the swing state in the 2020 election. The Air Force has yet to make any final decision despite the 2-year review. And now, here are some other stories that we're hearing chirps about. North Korea stayed silent yesterday about the detention of an American soldier who sprinted across the Korea's heavily fortified border. A U.S. official said Private Travis King is a 23-year-old cavalry scout who was on rotation in South Korea as part of the 1st Armored Division. He was previously arrested in October 2022 following an altercation with 2 South Koreans, and also reportedly damaged a local police officer's patrol car. A senior Republican senator announced plans this week to block the historic confirmation of Veterans Affairs' first female deputy secretary. Senator Chuck Grassley said he has concerns that Tanya Bradshaw, an Army veteran, failed to protect personal information of whistleblowers during her duties as Department Chief of Staff. Navy veteran Hung Kao entered the Republican race to challenge Virginia Senator Tim Kaine in 2024. And The Guardian is reporting that multiple people are in the hospital after a crash involved a truck carrying a U.S. Abrams tank in Queensland, Australia. And on this day in history in 1948, President Harry Truman issued a peacetime draft requiring millions of men to register for military service. That's it for us this morning. To get more top stories and breaking news, go to defensenews.com/EBB to subscribe to the Early Bird Brief newsletter. Please give us a like, rating, and a comment wherever you get your podcasts. And be sure to follow us on social media @defense_news and @Military Times. The Early Bird Brief is hosted and produced by me, Simone Z. Perez. Today's episode features stories by Leo Shane III, Rachel Cohen, Brian Harris, and Courtney Albon. Our editor-in-chief is Mike Bruce. Have a great day.